Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. If you're new to the show, welcome. Today we're going to take time to answer your questions about gluten sensitivity. If you missed Tuesday's show, it was about a deep dive on how gluten-free diets can fail, and I strongly encourage you to go back and check that out if you haven't already. But we're going to prioritize gluten questions first today, and then we'll go into additional questions if you have them. So if you're new, type those questions in. I'll do my best to get the rest of these answered, or to get your questions answered in this hour. And also, you might want to think about taking a look over at glutenfreesociety.org if you haven't been over there. That's our hub where we post all kinds of amazing information about how to overcome autoimmunity with diet and lifestyle change. So check that out, and let's dive in. Let's see here. Gluten-free FODMAP diet. Okay, so question is, update on the friend kicked in the head and has increased migraines based on her various symptoms. I suspect gluten sensitivity, and she indeed has that. What impact do you expect a gluten-free FODMAP diet to have on her persistent migraine? It's hard to say. I mean, migraines have a lot of different triggers. Trauma certainly can be a trigger, but so too can can gluten. Gluten is a known trigger for migraine headaches. It's a neurological toxin, so there's no doubt that gluten reduction or gluten removal can have an effect on migraine. It's just a matter of whether or not it will with your friend. Vitamin B12, CoQ10, vitamin B2, magnesium deficiencies can all also play a role in migraine headaches. We do have, you might share this with your friend, we have a comprehensive video on migraine headaches, a crash course, if you will, where we talk about a lot of the different types of gluten and other related migraine triggers. So I'd encourage you, Melinda, to share that with your friend. Let's see here. Is Histadine good for celiac patient? I had gastritis and followed advice to heal the lining of my stomach. It worked. Amazing. Thank you so much. Love it. Histadine's fine for a celiac patient. There's no contraindication to using histidine as a supplementary. It's an amino acid. You eat it in your food when you eat protein. So, but as far as whether or not it is a necessity or requirement for somebody with celiac, that depends on the person. My advice is, what I always encourage is for people to have testing done, right? Test, don't guess, to determine whether or not taking extra supplemental histidine is going to be a good move for you. Let's see. Is there an acceptable substitute on a gluten-free diet for cheese? I don't really like the cheese substitutes tremendously. I mean, there is a brand, I think Miyoko's, I think is what it is, and they make a cashew style cheese. There are soy type cheeses, which I'm not a big fan of a lot of these products, simply because they're highly processed foods. And anytime you get into that realm of highly processed foods, this is especially true of those of you who are new to gluten-free diet or new to celiac disease. They're just not, they're not going to help you heal, and they could potentially set you back. So I know that's maybe not what you wanted to hear, Bill, but that's generally what I would say about, processed cheeses. Let's see. What are your thoughts on oxalate reducing enzyme? I think you can use an enzyme to reduce oxalate. You can also supplement with probiotics. Species of lactobacillus and bifidobacter are also helpful in oxalate metabolism. So is vitamin B6 and zinc. They're necessary to break oxalate down. I think at the end of the day, oxalate gets a bad rap probably doesn't deserve the rap that it has. Oxalates are nowhere near as toxic or dangerous as what a lot of folks are saying. I think in my experience anyway, the biggest issue clinically with high oxalates, they can be problematic. That's not to say they can't be. But most people with high oxalates, in my experience, are either in mold or have mold in them, especially those with yeast or candida overgrowths, because these microorganisms can actually produce oxalate. And so what happens is if you have an overgrowth, you're making oxalate from the microorganism, and so dietary oxalates become overwhelming. And it's not necessarily that foods with oxalate are necessarily dangerous or bad for people. It's that if you deal with the underlying yeast issue, oftentimes people can regain tolerance to consumption of oxalate containing foods, which ultimately, ideally, we want people to be able to eat a wide array and diversity of different whole, healthy, organically grown foods, to include, plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and meats. That ultimately, but many people end up, especially with chronic inflammatory bowel diseases like celiac disease, end up with we call acquired sensitivities or acquired allergies as a result of the leakiness of their gut or the inflammation in the gut. And so that you have to resolve the reasoning behind that so that you at one point can expand your diet back out and diversify it. Celiac with dermatitis herpetiformis, diagnosed in February 22 by biopsy. I keep a food diary, whole house, gluten, soy, corn free. I've checked everything and still break out like I've been gluten. So I would ask, are you following a traditional gluten-free diet? Are you following a true gluten-free diet? Traditional gluten-free would be wheat, barley, rye free. I mean, I know you mentioned corn free there, but there's a form of gluten in oats called avenin. There's a form of gluten in rice called orzanin. There's gluten in millet. So a lot of these grain-based products that are labeled gluten-free technically aren't gluten-free. They're you have to understand that most countries' federal definition of gluten is really gliadin found in wheat. And so it can be very misconstrued. If you haven't already, read No Grain, No Pain, that book, where I break down all the different forms of gluten and what a lot of people are missing in their celiac diets, and why celiacs. It's about 92% of celiacs fail to achieve remission of villus atrophy or inflammation on a traditional gluten-free diet. And that's 20 years ago. It's what led me to research this topic in much greater detail, because I had patients who just were not recovering or getting better, where they would develop what we call gluten-free whiplash. And that was a major core problem for many of these people. So what changed their problem? What helped them get over it? Grain-free diet versus the traditional gluten-free diet. So I would encourage you to, again, read No Grain, No Pain, or check out our glutenology masterclass. It's 14 hours long, and we do a deep dive of all the science around gluten, proteins, and gluten sensitivity. Now, let's see here. Is it important to cycle off of supplements? If so, which ones would you say to be beneficial? I mean, that's a huge question. Cycling off and on, I think it's important that you listen to your body. I think, when some people want to cycle off of supplements, like, for example, let's say you've been taking a B vitamin complex for 6 months, and you're tired of swallowing pills and you're getting nauseous when you use them. Yeah, take a break for sure, no doubt. Listen to your body in that regard. But cycling supplements is guesswork. And at the end of the day, you've heard me say this: test, don't guess. If you're thinking about cycling supplements, if you're taking different things because of purported benefits of different supplements, and you're not sure what you need to take or why you're taking it or how long you should take it, testing is going to be a much better avenue. It'll save you a ton of money as well, because you won't have to buy anywhere near as much stuff and over the long haul, what your body needs is not what you read about or speculate you might be benefited from. And that's where testing can give you an advantage. So cycling off and on of supplements, and just say, listen to your body. There are 3 key supplements that I encourage everyone to consider using on the regular. One is a good quality multivitamin like Ultra Nutrients, and you can check that out at Gluten Free Society. 2 is a good quality omega-3. We have one called Omega Max. And then number 3 would be a good digestive enzyme, especially for those of you with celiac or gluten sensitivity who have digestive struggles. But those 3, I don't personally, I take them, and I take omega, and I take a multivitamin, and I do not cycle them. And those are some of the most consistent things I do day in and day out, because the way I look at a good multi and a good omega is their food insurance, because food is grown, via scalable agriculture, and you have lower nutrient density in the food, even if it's organic. And so I want that food insurance. I want to make sure I'm hitting the right notes with my nutrients. Now, when it comes to other extraneous supplements, there are hundreds of thousands of products available today to most people, in different mediums. And so in that regard, it's just, how do you know which one is right for you? Test, don't guess. Let's see. Anne is asking, after many years of eating gluten-free, is it possible for the wheat to counteract if baking a gluten-free pizza is in the same oven as a gluten pizza? You mean can you react to the potential for your oven to be contaminated? It's probably not super likely, and that wouldn't be my concern. What my bigger concern would be is that flat, depending on what you're baking your pizza on, is it a wooden pizza holder? Is it a metal pizza holder? Is it porous? Is it made of stone? Because dishes and kitchen instruments can get cross-contaminated with gluten. And so that would be really my bigger issue of concern, more so than just using a similar oven or the same oven. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Let's see. Okay, so going back to one of the questions about, somebody asked about, still struggling with breakouts. If you're still struggling, Phillips, I don't know if you say you've read No Grain, No Pain, and I'm hoping you're following it, but you might also consider watching some of my videos on gluten mimickers or gluten accelerators. If you type that into the search engine with my name, you'll find those videos, and there may be some pearls or insights in those that might help you, from your breakout. The other thing I would highly encourage you to do, if you haven't already, get tested for micronutrient deficiencies. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies sometimes are the reason people don't get better after going on the proper diet. When your body lacks nutrients, it lacks the capacity to heal and repair. So if you've got pre-existing damage, it can be very much a challenge to get that to recover if you're malnourished going into it. One of the other things that you want to be aware of, and in my experience clinically, probably the biggest holdup for people who don't respond to diet change is we find they have yeast overgrowth in their GI tracts. Yeast can produce a protein that mimics gluten. And if you have a yeast overgrowth, you could be 100% grain-free, doing everything right. But as long as that microorganism is thriving in your GI tract, producing these gluten-mimicking proteins, you continue to struggle. So that's something else you might consider investigating. Let's see. Let's see here. Please help. I'm pregnant, having Sjogren's and celiac, and consistently do not digest anything where I'm on a liquid diet, and even that is painful. Oh man, that's a tough one. Not so much tough or challenging, but tough in the sense that it's hard for me to to tell you everything you'd need to know in just this short time on YouTube. I would give you very similar advice, Jen. Read No Grain, No Pain. Follow that diet first. If you haven't read it and you're not familiar with it, it can save your life, literally. And get it as quickly as you can, because if you're eating what you think is proper for celiac but doing it wrong, you're not going to get better. Again, that's what we have seen time and time and time again. I didn't even want to write a book, honestly. I wrote No Grain, No Pain back in 2016 because I just had too many people approaching us already following a gluten-free diet, not getting better. I had too many patients struggling. And so I was kind of backed into a corner to put that book together because there were just too many people that needed the information. And, I can't be everywhere at once either. But it's there, so you should use it as a resource. And you can get it at any major bookstore. You can buy it on Amazon. You can check it out, and a lot of libraries carry it. So strongly encourage you to embrace that if you haven't. Mary says, I'm waiting on my zinc to arrive. I had my INA, my nutrition analysis test, and zinc was borderline deficient. The middle finger on our fingernail on both hands always splits. Could that be a reason? Absolutely. Mineral deficiency is a common reason why we'll see fingernails split. Zinc is a common contributor to that, but so too can calcium and magnesium and selenium deficiencies can all contribute to that as well. But zinc definitely at the top of the list for affecting fingernail growth. What's your opinion on taking food allergy tests? If does this support people following a gluten-free diet? It can. One of the reasons why, Nana, is people acquire food allergy when their gut's inflamed. And again, gluten causes GI tract inflammation. And so you may have started to develop reactions to foods that you're currently eating. This is where more specifically, food sensitivity testing can be very valuable and helpful. The problem with a lot of food sensitivity tests, though, is a lot of them stop at IgG. The only thing they're measuring is IgG. So if you're looking into buying one or doing one, remember there's IgG, there's also IgA, there's also IgM, there's something called T cell response, and there's something called an immune complex response. So you really want to make sure that if you're going to go and do testing, that you're really assessing as comprehensively as you possibly can. And IgG by itself is not comprehensive enough. Recommendations on asthma. I'm already gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free, whole food diet, detoxifying from mold and candida. Mold can cause asthma. So, are you detoxing from mold? The question is, TJ, are you out of the mold? If you're not out of it, you can't detoxify from it because you're being, if you're being consistently exposed. Number one rule of detox is get out of the environment, right? Or quit being retoxed. So if you're out of the mold, great. But if you're not, the asthma is going to probably persist. Mold is a known contributing factor in respiratory inflammation. And then if you have candida, if you had that confirmed and diagnosed and confirmed, you've got to get that treated too. And so depending on your doctor and what they're going to recommend, but a lot of doctors will recommend antifungals like the azole antifungals like itraconazole or fluconazole, sometimes nystatin. Those are the prescription antifungals. And then some people opt to do more natural antifungal herbals, things like oregano, caprylic acid, thyme, all can be powerful as well in that regard. What can I do to get rid of my low basal temperature? You got to figure out why you have one. Why is it low? And some people just genetically are metabolically lower, right? So there's that. But then is it abnormally low? Is it pathologically low? There's a lot of reasons that can happen. Probably one of the more common ones would be disrupted thyroid function. Now, you should watch my master class on thyroid and nutrition because there's many nutrients that if you're deficient in, your thyroid won't work as well. And when your thyroid doesn't work as well, your metabolism slows down, and your core temperature can come down. And so that could be one of the reasons why. So check out my thyroid course on nutrition. You just, again, go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Osborne, and just type in thyroid and nutrition, and you should be able to pull up a multitude of videos that would be very helpful and much more in depth to help you navigate. So that's an odd question. What gut microbiota is responsible for the breakdown of choline, and what probiotic would be best to help with this? Why do you want to break down choline? Choline is a bioactive substance that's very important for the production of acetylcholine, which is the main neurochemical that allows your brain to think and have good cognition, and allows your parasympathetic nervous system to be activated. So I don't know why you'd want to break choline down. Maybe re-clarify your question for me. Would your consultation include testing for all GI yeast or some, if somebody was not complaining of gut or bowel issues? It would, Marlene. And the reason why, we measure when we do a consult, we do testing with people, we measure the microbiome for many reasons. One, what's living in your microbiome is going to either make or break your nutrition, right? So certain bacteria, for example, make B vitamins. Many of the bacteria that live in your gut produce something called mucin, which coats and lines the intestines and prevents leakiness from occurring. The microbiome regulates immune response. It actually, there's something called immune crosstalk, where your good bacteria talk to your immune system in your gut to help them navigate what's going on. So, I like an assessment of a microbiome regardless, even if somebody has no GI symptoms per se, because there's also something called extraintestinal manifestation. So when we look at, like, classically, we look at celiac disease and we say, what about people that have extraintestinal manifestations of gluten exposure? What are some examples of that? I mean, you see celiacs develop joint pain. That's not in their gut. We see celiacs develop brain inflammation and depression and neuropathy, and muscle aches or myalgias. So you have, that term extraintestinal just means that just because it starts in the gut doesn't mean it stays in the gut. I remember I had a conversation one time with Harvard researcher Alicio Fasano, and he had kind of a quip. He said, what happens, the gut is not like Vegas. What happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. That's why you get extraintestinal manifestation. So it's important to look at the gut in context to how different things you're consuming or different things are growing within your GI tract have the potential to access the rest of your bloodstream through the gut, and then subsequently affect your health in that way. If not celiac or gluten sensitive, but eating gluten free, is it wise to occasionally eat gluten to not become intolerant? I have antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. Functional doc said avoid gluten. I would argue, Michelle, that you are gluten sensitive. I've never seen, in almost 25 years of practice, I've never seen a person with an autoimmune diagnosis that was not gluten sensitive, not once. And we test. But here's the caveat. How is the testing done? There's different ways to try to test for gluten sensitivity in celiac disease. Boy, that's a long conversation, probably a couple hours long, but I'm going to summarize it as briefly as I can. Genetic testing is the #1 way to determine whether or not you should be on a gluten-free diet. And traditionally, a lot of doctors will do celiac gene testing, where they'll measure something called HLA-DQ2 and 8, but they don't measure non-celiac gluten gene patterns. Those are HLA-DQ1 and DQ3. And so if you haven't been properly tested, you may have been told you didn't have a problem with gluten, but you actually do. I would agree with your functional doc. I mean, just based on the premise that you have antiphospholipid antibodies, I would strongly encourage you to follow that instruction. But I'd also encourage you to have a conversation with that doctor about doing genetic testing to get a real answer, because I would surmise you are gluten sensitive, just based on my experience. My friend just got diagnosed with a motor neuron disease, ALS, so amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Been given 20 months. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Hannah. That's awful. She's deteriorating rapidly. She has 3 children, small children, and is desperate to try anything. Any ideas? ALS is tough. It's a very, very tough illness. I lost my stepfather to ALS before I even went to graduate school. This was years ago. And it was hard to watch, but I would start with a few things, what we know about ALS, and I have seen some ALS patients respond well to these things. Number one, no grain, no pain, just follow the diet. If she's open to it, have her follow the diet. It's probably one of the top things that she can do. Beyond that, most cases of ALS I've ever seen clinically had mold in the background, like they were being poisoned by mold in their home. And so if your friend has ALS and is deteriorating rapidly, I would strongly encourage her to look into having a mold inspection of her home. Now, that being said, a mold inspection needs to be done in a particular way. So you have to be careful, because an air test, a lot of mold inspectors come out to do an air test, and they won't find it on an air test because air tests are inaccurate. If you send your friend to moldjacked.com, we have a very comprehensive piece on how to hire a mold inspector, like the qualifications you're looking for and what you need and what you want in a person to do a good job. And I would strongly encourage that as well. So those 2 things: follow no grain, no pain, get the house investigated for mold. Outside of that, if she's in a bad way, she really needs to get in and see, a functional medicine expert. I mean, you can share our contact information with her. I mean, I'm happy to see her, but she's on a short leash as far as what she's been given. And if you send her my information, it's going to take several months just to get her in. So, but there are other functional doctors that maybe offer quicker appointment time, but I wouldn't wait, because the traditional medicine has let's just say no effective treatment for ALS at all. Okay. My daughter was diagnosed with Addisons disease, which is an autoimmune disease of the adrenal glands, in 2018. Is it still possible to heal with nutrition and get her off her daily steroids? I have seen cases where that was possible. I've also seen cases where it was more challenging, Laura. That's the thing. No doctor can guarantee the future outcome. But is a diet change going to benefit her? No doubt in my mind. Absolutely no doubt. Not only from my own experiences, but also from several colleagues who've also treated Addisons disease. So, the best thing to do would be to start with diet change. But even more importantly, I'd say with a disease like that, get her in to see a good functional practitioner and get some of the proper testing done, because with any autoimmunity, including ALS, Addisons, you've got 4 triggers that need to be investigated right out of the gate. It's like the primary thing to investigate with autoimmunity are the categorical triggers, and those 4 categorical triggers are food, chemical exposures, microbes, and nutritional deficiencies. So those categories out of the gate need to be looked at. Again, they can be measured objectively, and that's important that a person with an autoimmune condition have that done if they're going to find real solutions and real answers. Otherwise, it's anyone's guess, because everyone's triggers are different. If my iron and ferritin is low, but my hemoglobin is normal, should I still be taking iron? Yes, you should be, because you can have normal hemoglobin and still be iron deficient. So, and then there's also, depending on the range of your hemoglobin in the lab's reference range, there's tremendous variability from one lab to the next, Laura. And so some lab reference ranges are more narrow and on the higher end. So it's harder to say you have hemoglobin deficiency for that lab's reference range. But if your ferritin's low and your iron is low, you're iron deficient and you need to get on iron. I mean, that's pretty easy. That's a no-brainer. Okay, question about choline. Is there microbes that help synthesize choline? I mean, Lactobacillus bifidobacteria are good places to start as far as probiotics to support choline. But I'd eat choline. I mean, you're gonna be far vastly superior to eat choline than to rely on a microorganism to make it. So what's one of the richest choline sources? Eggs. And don't throw away the yolk. Eat it with all the cholesterol. It's delicious and it's good for you and it's rich in choline. One of the most choline dense foods you could consume. Is it possible to eat too much arrowroot? Yeah, it is. Are there side effects? Yeah, bloating, gas, intestinal discomfort, constipation. Arrowroot is it pulls water really well, so it'll make a gravy, and if you eat a lot of it and you're a little bit underhydrated, it'll thicken your bowels pretty fast and constipate you. It's also super high carbohydrate. So you can eat, I mean, you can overeat any food, honestly, but if you're talking about carbohydrate as a whole, if you're using arrowroot in all of your things as a gluten-free substitute, you can get into trouble with too much just being an over consumption of carbohydrates, creating problems with blood sugar, among other issues. Yeah, things that say gluten-free still have gluten. That's exactly right, and that's the problem with food labeling laws is that they only classify wheat, barley, and rye as gluten-containing grains, and they just really are behind the research on this, like behind it, not as in supportive of it, but behind it, as in not caught up to date. I have somehow developed walking imbalance since May of 21. I'm taking carbidopa and levodopa, which helps some. So do you have Parkinson's disease? Because those medications are for people with a Parkinson's diagnosis, Susan, and that would be important context as well. Parkinson's is autoimmune. So as I was mentioning earlier, if you want to try to understand better what's triggering it, you need to understand food reactions, chemical reactions, microbes, and nutritional deficiencies. I've had people with Parkinson's do tremendously well with diet and lifestyle change based on objective measurements. So it's really something I would encourage you to look into. You can't, I mean, carbidopa and levodopa are basically synthetic dopamine. And so just understand that dopamine is derived from phenylalanine and tyrosine, which are amino acids that you eat in your diet. A lot of people with neurological degenerative autoimmune diseases like Parkinson's are being told to go plant-based, and there's just not an abundantly ready amount of phenylalanine in plants, and so you could be I don't know what kind of diet you're following, but I'm just trying to share my experience with you. So phenylalanine and tyrosine are important. Vitamin B6, copper, vitamin C, folate are all necessary to synthesize dopamine. So for your body to be able to make its own dopamine, those nutrients are requirements, essential requirements for that production. And so getting those measured might also be a helpful first place to start as well. My sister has arthritis in her hands and knees. Any advice? Depends on what kind of arthritis, Minnie. If it's rheumatological arthritis, no grain, no pain, all the way. Get her a copy of the book for her, for Easter. Get her a copy of the book for her birthday or whatever. You don't even need an excuse. Just get her a copy and have her follow the 30-day diet and see if it impacts, her pain levels. In many cases, it does, especially with autoimmune arthritis. Now, if it's different kind of arthritis, and there are a lot of different types, like a disuse atrophy, if she sits at a desk and she has a sedentary job and doesn't have enough activity in her life, that may be a different animal or a different beast. There are different things to consider in that regard. You consider a good chiropractor or good physical therapy to help with those types of things. But if it's autoimmune, I'd start with no grain, no pain. Well, let's see here. What approach to hormonal migraines have you found to be effective? I'm 42 and have had hormonal migraines since I was a teen. No one will check my hormones. Number one, if you've done diet change, April, if you're following no grain, no pain, if you're following a really clean whole food diet, you have to then look for, because that oftentimes resolves it, in my experience. Beyond that, I mean, because you have Hashimoto's, that's probably the right move for you to make. But beyond that, hormone, if it's a hormonal migraine, meaning you get migraines that are triggered by your cycle, you've got to look for artificial sources of estrogen exposure in your day-to-day life. Pesticides, plastics, plasticizers, BPA, cosmetics that contain plasticizers are all potential reasons to see hormonally induced migraines, because when you are bombarded with excessive estrogens environmentally, when your cycle turns, that's a trigger. Now, in addition to that, we see a lot of women with hormonal migraines have a mold in their background. There's a particular species of mold called Fusarium that produces a toxin called ZEA, ZEA, and ZEA mimics estrogen. And so it's another way we can get a source of exogenous or external estrogen that can drive us into an estrogen dominant state, triggering or being a trigger for hormonal or menstrual migraine. So I would look at all of those things as potential targets. Melinda's asking, a picky relative dislikes all seafood and gets burping from many omegas. You should have her try ours. Ours is no burp. And we've got a lot of reviews stating that very claim, but we designed it to be no burp. The doctor told her her cholesterol is fine and she doesn't need omega-3s. If she could get her omega levels checked, I mean, there's a test that a doctor can order called an omega check, and I would, if that level's below 8%, then she needs to be on omegas if she doesn't like fish. Most people I see that don't eat fish, when we check their omegas, they're usually in the 2-3% range. I just said they need to be at least 8%. So as far as SPMs are not EPA and DHA. They're downstream derivatives of EPA and DHA. So they would not do the same thing. What resolvins or SPMs are specialized pro-resolving mediators, are designed more for people that have had or been in a situation where they've had chronic inflammation that's just not going away. Think of long COVID, or people that have been in mold for a long period of time and now they're out of it, but their inflammation isn't calming down. Like this is where SPMs really can be effective, including diseases like autoimmune arthritis, where the inflammation has just been playing out for a very long time, and the body doesn't know how to shut it off or is stuck in go mode on inflammation. And that's where SPMs help better support the flip switching, if you will, of the inflammatory cascade. Let's see. Can you please clarify, is there any difference in risk between coconut yogurt and regular dairy yogurt when trying to keep Candida overgrowth at bay? I don't recommend or dairy yogurt if you're trying to keep Candida overgrowth at bay, Stacy, especially if it's A1 dairy, because there's problems with A1 dairy that can lead to gastrointestinal inflammation. So I don't know if that gives you the clarity you're looking for. Let's see. So Susan was asking earlier about carbidopa, levodopa. So you're on those medicines, but you don't have a diagnosis. I don't know what doctor put you on those, Susan, but I'd go back and have a different conversation, because you really want to try to minimize the use of those medicines, because they will, over time, they become less and less and less effective. So you want to minimize the use and only use them if you absolutely need them for quality of life. And especially if you don't have a Parkinson's diagnosis, that to me would be, I don't know, kind of a red flag, because those drugs don't come without consequence. I'm postmenopausal with some symptoms: dry vaginal dryness, dry skin, dry nose, lining, hair fall. Is it possible to balance hormones naturally? Yes, it is, but you've got to get very objective about it. You know, a lot of those symptoms we see in postmenopausal women, a lot of times they can be largely impacted by nutrition. Good nutrition and eating enough protein, making sure you have adequate amounts of fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, because they play a role in moisturization. And so I would, you know, those are just easy places to think about starting. But the answer is, yeah, I mean, you can balance them naturally. Um, you know, the body's an amazing piece of work. It knows what to do. And generally speaking, most people are inadvertently hurting themselves or harming themselves, not on purpose, right? Inadvertently, because they're doing whatever it is, they're doing it wrong. They're being exposed to the wrong things. They're eating the wrong foods. They're not going to bed on time. They're not exercising appropriately. They're just not taking care of themselves. And this is a failure of our medical system more than it is a failure of individuals. Um, and the reason why is that largely as a society, we've outsourced health into the hands of individuals who know nothing about it. And so we've created a social paradigm where you go to your doctor when you have a problem, but your doctor doesn't understand how to treat problems. He understands how to mask symptoms, and that's not an effective way to go about being healthy. We can see that. Look how it's played out. Just if you're just talking about the US alone, I think we're 300% greater in expenses on medicines than any other country in the world, yet we have the worst healthcare and the worst healthcare outcomes when it comes to chronic and degenerative problems. So yeah, it's a sad state. So you've got to get clarity and you've got to take ownership of your own health. And the way you do that is fundamentally think about 6 things first. There's 6 things that all of you could walk away from today and think about more aggressively, and take action on them. The first is eat whole, real food, not fake food. And you have to be real honest about that. Flip that label over and look at what's in it. If you're going to a restaurant, no, you're not eating organic, and you're probably eating something that's been doused in sugar and cooked in seed oil. Not good for you. You have to come to the realization that your conveniences, that you're used to around food, have made you sick and are making you sick. And so you have to come back to nature, so to speak, and really normalize whole, real foods and prioritize them in your life. So food is one, bedtime is another. You know, we use electricity and artificial light to stay up all hours. We go to bed with the sun and try to wake up with the sun. We are circadian creatures, and we need to get adequate sleep so that our bodies can heal and repair. And that inadequate sleep shows up more and more over time. Like the longer you have inadequate sleep, the more you break down slowly over time. So you've got food, you've got sleep, then you've got activity, exercise. We have a sedentary workforce nowadays. You gotta get up, you gotta move. And if you don't have an active job or active work, you've got to find and schedule times in your day to be active. Number 4 is sunshine. Everybody's been told to avoid it for fear of cancer of the skin, which is total nonsense. Sunburning can cause cancer, but sunshine does not. And so you have to approach sunshine with just common sense. Don't go out on a boat with no clothes on for 12 hours. You're going to burn, and that's bad for you. But you should get outside every day and be exposed to natural sunlight. It helps your skin make vitamin D. It helps you make melatonin. It helps regulate cortisol and helps regulate serotonin production. It helps increase energy production in your mitochondria. I mean, there's so many benefits to sunlight. Go watch my Light as Medicine YouTube show on that one. Super comprehensive. And then there's two more things you should be strategizing about, and that's clean air and clean water. So if we summarize: clean food, whole food, exercise, sleep, sunshine, clean air, clean water. If you're doing your part, your body has the amazing ability to respond and feel better. And if you're doing all those things really, really well, and you're still struggling, that's when you seek testing. That's when you seek a doctor who understands functional care and can help you objectify a lot of the data sets or points that you're going to need to know about yourself so that you can adjust your diet accordingly or adjust your behaviors accordingly. Wondering if you have a list of testing we should do intracellularly. I live in the EU. No, I mean, not really, because there's not a comprehensive list of intracellular testing, in that fashion. I mean, INA is hands down the best technology to use, intracellular nutrition analysis. We run that here in the US, in our clinic, and also we offer it directly online for, customers at Gluten Free Society. I would ask your doctor if he's familiar with a technology called lymphocyte proliferation. There may be some options for some testing, in the European Union for that. But otherwise, you're limited to what you can measure. Like, you can measure red blood cell copper and zinc and magnesium, but outside of those, there's really not a lot of options from just traditional commercial labs. Most of what you're going to be stuck with is serum testing. Now, there's some surrogate testing that you can probably ask for that are pretty common, like homocysteine elevations can be a surrogate marker for B12 and folate and B6 deficiency. And so you might ask about homocysteine as a marker indirectly. And you can have your 25-OHD measured as well. That's actually a really good marker for vitamin D, and it is a serum marker. And then your iron and ferritin, iron panel and ferritin are good things to look at for iron. But beyond those examples, you really have to get intracellular assessments done. Which magnesium can offer the best absorption but without runny poop? Have you checked, Zoya? Have you checked out our Ultra MG? It's a blend of multiple types of magnesium for that reason. It's the design is so that it doesn't induce diarrhea as like some of the magnesiums do. But just look up Ultra MG. Okay, let's see here. I think I missed some questions at the top here. Wondering if it's possible to buy your products in Europe. I'm in Amsterdam. We're working on it. I know I keep saying that, but we're working on getting an overseas supplier for our products. I had high liver enzymes, ALT 24 and 35. Could that be from hepatitis from 3 years ago? I mean, if you had an acute bout of infectious hepatitis and it's resolved, probably not. There may be something else that's affecting those enzymes. I will say this: if you're ever going to go and get your blood work done at your doctor's office, if you exercise every morning, you need to skip your exercise the day of your blood work. And the reason why is weightlifting or strenuous exercise can artificially elevate your liver enzymes and make you think you've got a liver problem, when in fact it's just a side effect of exercise. So that's one thing to note. Beyond that, there are a lot of things that can elevate liver enzymes: yeast overgrowth, mold, choline deficiency, inositol deficiency, glutathione deficiency, cysteine deficiency. So there's just a tremendous amount of nutritional relationship with liver enzyme function. And so it's alcohol is the obvious thing that, alcohol and polypharmacy, many people are on multiple medications, and so it does impact their liver's ability in the long run to properly metabolize. So those are some of the big reasons why we might see that occur. But I doubt if it's 3 years ago that you had hepatitis and your hepatitis is gone at this point, I doubt it's the hepatitis. The liver's a very fast healer, and 3 years is too long for it to still have damage from that historical exposure. All the rage is alkalinizing the body for health. If you drink alkalized water, will this negate the acid in your stomach? Yes. Look, alkaline everything is a bad idea. Alkalinization is, first of all, pH it's a very complex thing. pH is different in your stomach than it is in your intestines. It's different in your blood than it is in your mouth or your urine. Like, you've got variable pH depending on the space of the body that we're referring to. And too many people don't understand this. And so their recommendation is just alkalinize, alkalinize. Everything is about alkalinization. And I don't agree with that. We'll just say simplistic thought of pH modulation. There's a lot of things that are acidic that can actually, at the end of the day, alkalinize your blood. And so I wouldn't, again, I wouldn't be taking in alkalinized water for an attempt to radically alter your pH, because you will neutralize your stomach acid, or you'll alkalinize your stomach acid, and then you won't digest well. And when you don't digest well, you'll have undigested particulate putrefy in your gut, and that will increase the acidity. And now you'll have other issues in that regard. So anyway, alkalinizing water, don't spend your money on it. Now, if you're filtering your water with reverse osmosis, you do want to add buffering minerals back to it, because the process of RO removes the natural minerals present in water. And the natural minerals present in water do create a buffer effect on the water. They do increase the pH or alkalinize the water. And those things are there in nature. But when you live in a city and you're worried about chlorine and bromine and fluoride and other chemicals in your water, and you're using good filters like RO, you do demineralize that water. So add electrolyte back if that's your situation, but don't worry about buying super expensive alkalinizers or alkalinized water. Are all the infrared lights beneficial? Yeah, but that's what the sunshine has, right? The freest form of red light therapy is go outside. If you're looking for, just a, good quality infrared light source, one of my favorite brands is Platinum LED. They don't pay me. I'm not an affiliate for those guys. I just find that their machines are very good and do a good job. But sunlight is free, and I would, all day long, I'll go outside before I use my red light box. I mean, I use it in the winter mainly, but when the summer months are here, I'm outside. Is it beneficial to put fulvic or humic acid in your water every day, or is it too much? Beneficial in what way? You got to give me more specifics on what you're after. Thoughts on using Akkermansia probiotic for weight loss? You can. I mean, there's some decent science behind Akkermansia, but if you're relying on Akkermansia for weight loss and not doing the work, the real work of weight loss, is it's the unsexy, non-marketable part, and that's just the work. Do the work. What is the work for weight loss? It's eat less, exercise efficiently and effectively, go to bed on time, breathe clean air, drink clean water, go outside and get sunshine. If you're doing those things, weight loss, or healthy weight is a natural consequence of good dietary and lifestyle choices, and not necessarily a consequence of taking probiotics. And that's not to say it can't be helpful, but Karen, I would just say, if you're not doing those other things, do those. You'll get far more benefit from doing those. How to get a good night's sleep. Joyce, go watch my show on sleep. I did a whole show, super detailed on sleep hygiene, among other things that are problematic in people who are not able to get restful, peaceful sleep. Now, amino acids and micronutrients beneficial for non-alcoholic liver damage? Absolutely, absolutely. But the bigger thing is if you have non-alcoholic liver damage, what's causing it? If it's not alcohol, what is it? What's driving it? One of the biggest factors in non-alcoholic fatty liver, in my experience, is gluten exposure. Another big one is yeast overgrowth in the GI tract, because yeast ferment carbohydrates into alcohol, and that can translate into problems for your liver. With so much fog lately, which dims the sun, how do I get sun exposure? Sun exposure on the cloudiest day on Earth is far more powerful than any infrared light or tanning bed you could get in. So go out in the fog is what I would say. Go out where there's overcast. You're still going to get healthy radiation, healthy red light, infrared, far red, near red, ultraviolet, yellow light, green light. You're going to get them all from, from natural light exposure outside, even with overcast, even with fog. Get out there and get it. If a friend has oxalate crystals in his urine, do you advise more water, more calcium, both? But ultimately, why? Why? I mean, there are genetic reasons people can have hyperoxalate levels or hyperoxaluria, and then there also are environmental reasons. The biggest environmental reason we see is really got to do with B vitamin deficiency, B6, combined with mold exposure or yeast overgrowth. So I would encourage your friend to look into those things. 83 years old on 4 different blood pressure medicines at the same time. Ugh. Any suggestions for a plan to wean off? You might consider watching my crash course on blood pressure. Lots of things will lower blood pressure, nutritionally, dietarily. Just for starters, eliminate any form of processed food, and consider supplementing with B vitamins and CoQ10. Those are low-hanging, easy things to do that we know can impact blood pressure quite well. And then motion and movement. At 83, I don't know how physically active you are, but there's no time that's too late to start. And so even if you start where you're at. You don't have to start where you were when you were 40 or 50, but you start with motion and movement. You start with knee bends, toe touches, simple things that move your body. Even going for a walk can be extremely powerful for reducing blood pressure. Getting some sunshine, making sure you get your vitamin D levels checked. Vitamin D deficiency can cause high blood pressure. Zinc deficiency can cause high blood pressure. But ultimately, the big problem with being on 4 medications, and those particular medications that you listed, valsartan and metoprolol and spironolactone, but those medicines, valsartan can cause malnutrition. We know it causes villus atrophy and can actually mimic celiac disease. In that regard, it causes malnutrition, right, and malabsorption, which can lead to nutritional deficiencies that increase blood pressure. We know metoprolol can affect CoQ10 and zinc, which deficiencies of those nutrients can increase blood pressure. Spironolactone can affect B vitamin, and so those things can also affect. So you've got to talk with the doctor about drug-induced nutritional deficiencies and getting those supported while engaging with activity, sunshine, and other healthy behaviors to get it down, to start getting it down. And then you can start kind of tapering down, work with that doctor to start tapering down some of those medications. How does one desensitize the body to chronic pain response? You have to figure out what's driving the pain. So pain's a complex topic, but I mean most of the good theories around pain are, pain is inflammatory, but pain can also be intrinsically connected to the nervous system, and so there's belief and perception, and and perception can be tremendous as it relates to pain. That's why some people take drugs that alter neurochemistry and have pain relief. And that's why some people take drugs that alter inflammation and have pain relief, right? So inflammatory and neurological pain are really two of the main types. If you've got chronic pain, reflex sympathetic dystrophy or POTS or Ehlers-Danlos, one, you got to change your diet, no doubt about it. Diet change has to be the core of your process. But outside of that, you've got to figure out what those triggers are with chronic pain responses. In my experience, the biggest triggers are the four big triggers: food, chemicals, microbes, nutritional deficiencies. Assess those, analyze those. That's the best first place to start. Oh, let's see. company, well, there's a company that does gene testing, and they list HLA-DQ2. Is that the gluten sensitivity test you like? Yeah, measuring HLA-DQ alpha 1 and HLA-DQ beta 1 genes is genetically the testing that I do. That being said, you have to make sure that they are looking at non-celiac and celiac genetic risk. Most HLA companies only look at celiac risk, so they limit their analysis of the gene to whether or not you have HLA-DQ2 or HLA-DQ8, and that is, you could be the right measurement, but it's not the comprehensive measurement. If you're looking for a place to get both celiac and non-celiac markers, then go to Gluten Free Society. We do HLA-DQ testing at Gluten Free Society, and that way you're getting the full spectrum of analysis done. Is there a problem taking NAC every day? Depends on the dose. I don't recommend super mega doses of NAC indefinitely, but NAC's pretty safe. Up to 2,000 milligrams a day, real safe, even in long-term research. But like with anything else, I don't recommend people take anything indefinitely at high doses without having those things monitored. So, are Histadine nodes for arthritis reversible? I've seen them go away. It depends on the person and depends on their willingness to change. If it's discovered a home has mycotoxins, do you have to throw away all books, documents, files, etc. to get rid of the toxins? That's the unanswered question, Cindy. I wish I could give you a super objective answer, and it's a question that that comes up a lot, because mycotoxins are dangerous, and if you've been in mold and you've been very sick from it, you don't necessarily want to bring all those books with you and bring all those toxins with you as well. But mycotoxins do degrade. So I would say if you wanted to hang on to them, I'd put them in a storage facility. That way nobody that lives there is being affected and getting sick as a result, because people don't live in storage units. But most of the shelf life of a mycotoxin for natural degradation is, I think it ranges somewhere between 5 and 10 years. So if these are things you don't really necessarily want to get rid of, but you also don't want to put in your new home that doesn't have mycotoxins or mold, then consider storing them for a length of time. And allowing those things to degrade. I heard the rennet in American cheese is either GMO, corn-based, or synthetic, and that's pretty accurate. Not all, but if you're going into the grocery store and buying some of the major brands, yes, that's pretty true. Inositol is stated by a vague source as having drug interactions with B vitamins. I would disagree with that. Inositol is perfectly safe to take with other B vitamins. There's no adjustments that would necessarily need to be made. Same thing with fat-soluble vitamins. They work interchangeably. They work together. When you eat food that contains inositol, it also contains B vitamins. We're not worried about those interactions. So it's just not something, I don't know where you heard that vague source information, but it's not something that I would say that in my experience is something I would worry about. Why do most people fail and plateau on gluten-free? Because they're missing something. Typically, a lot of people do the diet wrong. So they're doing, as I mentioned earlier, they're following a traditional gluten-free diet, but they're still being exposed to grain. A lot of people gravitate toward heavily processed foods, for convenience. And so you don't get healthy or regain your health by eating processed junk. A lot of people are malnourished. Gluten causes GI damage, and then that damage leads to malnutrition. And there are studies, this is true in my own clinic, but also I've seen other researchers do studies on lack of nutritional recovery after going on a gluten-free diet, meaning that in many people, they have to be supplemented with their deficit in order to help them heal, because they get stuck in a catch-22. The catch-22 is you're deficient in X nutrient because of years of gluten-induced damage. But in order for your body to heal and repair, the historical gluten damage, you need that nutrient. That's the catch-22. So in those cases, supplementation with that nutrient becomes very critical, very important for that individual to overcome or make a recovery. Is raw kefir a good probiotic? It can be if you don't have a problem with dairy, and if the quality of the dairy that you're using is good quality. Again, we're get in trouble with dairy products is mass scale production farms. They use A1 dairy typically. The cows are fed grain as the predominant food source. The grain is contaminated, oftentimes with mold or mycotoxins, but it also has got glyphosate and other chemicals in it. And so that translates into the milk of the animal, and then you're making kefir out of it or kefir out of it. That would not be my best choice. Now, if you're getting the source of whole organic A2 dairy from cows that were fed appropriately and had, and live in a pasture and not in a cell, now we're talking a food game altogether. But again, if you're new to the gluten-free diet, I always recommend people go on gluten-free, avoid dairy for the first 6 months, regardless of whether or not they have a problem with dairy, for two reasons. One, dairy has crossover reactivity with gluten, so the body will look at dairy proteins very similar to the way it might look at gluten. So if the immune system's already a little bit hypersensitized to gluten, it's going to look at dairy as a potential enemy too. So avoiding it for 6 months, allowing time for the immune system to calm down, it can be very helpful. But the other reason is that gluten-induced damage to the GI tract can reduce the enzyme that's required to break dairy down. And that's partly why we have a product called Dairy Shield, because it's a mix of enzyme that will break down lactose, which is the sugar found in dairy. It's called lactase. You've ever seen lactate milk at the grocery store? You just add that enzyme into that milk so that people with lactose intolerance can drink milk. But many people with gluten issues are lactose intolerant. They develop lactose intolerance as a consequence of gluten-induced damage to their enzyme production in their intestine. Why when I eat burgers outside, I feel bad? I don't know. Why do you feel bad when you eat them inside? Are you eating them with a bun or not a bun? It's hard to answer, Modi. I maybe re-ask the question with a little bit more specifics, and I give you a more intelligent answer. How can you reduce or remove arterial plaque? It's a complicated question. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but some good things to consider. Nutrients basically modulate and housekeep your blood vessels. So, is your plaque calcium, based? You might need vitamin K2. Some people have an inflamed arterial lining, and it's the inflammation that's causing the plaque. So if you figure out what's driving the inflammation, you can allow for healing to occur. Your body knows like I said earlier, your body knows what to do. It's generally what you're doing that isn't allowing it to do its work. But vitamin K, proteolytic enzymes, nattokinase, vitamin B3, high dose vitamin C, high dose lysine are all really good supplements to consider in your arsenal of supporting your arterial lining. Will constipation be a symptom of taking your ultra mineral supplement? I had been taking it after looking at my INA results, and it seemed to occur. No, not typically. But what I would encourage you to do is discontinue the use for 3 to 4 days, and then start taking it again. And if constipation goes away and comes back, you have an answer. Everybody can have a unique response to supplements. Um, so I never want to dismiss somebody's suspicion, but you always have to test it, because there's a lot of things that can drive constipation as a symptom, and there may be some other things going on in your life right now that are also contributing to that and have nothing to do with supplementation. So, a discontinuance with a recontinuance to kind of test whether or not you can get a repeat of your prior experience would be what I would recommend you do. Any natural blocker of iron in anemia of chronic disease? Well, anemia of chronic disease, you don't necessarily need to block iron. You have an anemia, you don't. I don't know why you're wanting to block iron. Anemia of chronic disease is because you're releasing iron because of the inflammation, but the iron's not necessarily problematic. The anemia is caused by the inflammatory loss. So blocking iron is not necessarily the best thing to do. Now, if you want to utilize iron more efficiently, more effectively, copper becomes very important in that regard. And then there are natural chelators of iron. Alpha lipoic acid and histidine as an amino acid can help bind iron and help your body utilize iron properly. So you might consider those as well. I've had 12 weeks of diarrhea, which suddenly switched to being totally backed up with severe abdominal pain. Any suggestions? If you're not on a good quality probiotic, I'd start there. A lot of times with chronic diarrhea like that, people can get either intestinal viruses or other intestinal bugs. And so, that would be something I would consider ruling in or out. Beyond that, if you're currently backed up, but you were prior with heavy diarrhea, there's a lot of nuance there, because it's how long, how many days. You might try digestive enzymes, you might try digestive acid, you might try bitters to stimulate digestion and movement and motility. Those are all potential things that might help. Let's see here. Should a heavy metal test be done provoked or unprovoked? Both. It should be done both provoked and unprovoked. And the reason unprovoked is because if you have any current exposure to heavy metal, it's going to show up on an unprovoked test. If you have historical accumulation of heavy metal, it's going to show up more accurately on a provoked test. And you want to know both of those things. Are you being exposed currently, or do you have a history of exposure? Right, because the number one rule of detox, when you start to think about detoxing from heavy metal, you want to make sure you're not being currently exposed. So if you have current exposure, which is best looked at on an unprovoked test, you want to know that so that you can address your environmental exposure before you begin a detox process. Should any of us be concerned with the lectins in tomato skins or seeds causing inflammation and other symptoms? Some of you should. I mean, I get people that are allergic or reactive to tomatoes, not infrequently. I have some people that are reactive to nightshades, which are a component of tomatoes that can definitely contribute to arthritis. So it's not a universal thing, Kylene. It's an individual thing, and it can be measured and can be tested for. So there's not a generic answer, but if you're following no grain, no pain, that's one of the reasons why we have people avoid nightshades in the phase 2 diet is because of that propensity to cause persistence and inflammation. Does grain-free mean avoiding gluten-free grains like quinoa and brown rice too? It does, Valentina. Quinoa is not a grain, it's a pseudo grain. Research has shown it to mimic wheat gluten. As far as brown rice is concerned, yes, it has a gluten in it called orzonin. How safe is methylene blue? I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I don't care what all the experts out there are saying on it. Industrial dyes don't come without cost. We just got the word that we're banning dyes in the food in the United States. It's very ironic. Here we are trying to ban the things that are damaging in our food while everyone's out there, painting their tongues blue with methylene blue. But if you have to use a chemical dye to have energy, you've got different problems. Nobody has illness over methylene blue deficiency, but many people have illness over environmental poisons, toxins, and other exposures they're getting. So I'm not a fan of using chemical manipulation to mask symptoms. Just not a fan. And I'm definitely not a fan of that dye. You wouldn't catch me anywhere near it. Doctor tested my ANA screen and it was positive. What do you suggest? All the doctors I followed up with don't care. It's interesting. There was a group of research studies done at the VA hospital where they were looking at ANA in blood samples that were decades old. So they had these cryofrozen samples of blood from soldiers, and they went back and drew this blood out of cryofreeze and then analyzed the blood. And they were analyzing it for ANA. And so anytime they found a positive ANA, they actually had the contact information for the people whose blood it was. And so they called these people up and said, hey, 20 years ago when you drew your blood, this was a military study. So these were military soldiers. 20 years ago when you drew your blood and you were healthy, but you had positive ANA, did you go on to develop autoimmune disease? And the answer was like 92% predictively positive. So these people with positive ANA did actually go on to develop diseases like rheumatoid and lupus and other autoimmunities. So I would encourage you to get the 4 triggers investigated: food, chemicals, microbes, nutritional deficiencies. Those things can be measured. And those are the primary driving factors behind autoimmune reactions. And if you understand what they are for you, then you can objectively apply them as your own blueprint of diet and lifestyle change to stay healthy if you're already healthy, or to get healthy if you're not. Can zinc supplements help copper overload? Yes. Zinc and copper have a kind of a seesaw relationship. Too much zinc for too long can contribute to copper reduction. Too much copper for too long can contribute to zinc reduction. So they're important together. Okay. What do you think of IV vitamin therapy as gut issues are severe? I think it depends. I mean, there's the potential benefit for IV vitamin therapies, but where I see a lot of problems with it is the filler in the IV. A lot of times it's GMO stuff. It's GMO corn, among other things, and so you've got to be careful in that regard. But there are indications sometimes for IV vitamin therapy. I think most people, even with chronic GI inflammation, can get better though without it. And that's been my experience clinically. But I'm not opposed to it either. I think you just have to make sure you're following up with a good doctor that knows what they're doing, and that they have a good understanding of the secret hidden filler ingredients in the IV bag, and that they're not doing anything inadvertently that you might have reactions against. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to call it a day. We covered a lot of ground, lots of questions. Well, one just came out. Is there a connection between gluten sensitivity and POTS? Yes, there is, Terry. I have a video on that. You might just go search that up on our YouTube channel. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you all joining me today. And look, there are a few things you can do. Number one, take advantage of our resource section at Gluten Free Society. If you're not familiar with it, It's the largest database of helpful, in layman's terms, actionable things you can do to navigate your diet and your lifestyle to overcome autoimmunity. Um, and so that's there. It's a free service. Just got to go to glutenfreesociety.org, sign up there for our newsletter, and we'll send you a bunch of fantastic information, no cost to you. And if you want to support us, we appreciate your business. We do have over 100 supplement products at Gluten Free Society that are there, vitamins, minerals, herbals, and a host of other things that can help you on your health journey. And so any support using our products that you want to give, we appreciate it. We're commercial free because we don't want that extraneous influence, tricking people. So your support there is greatly appreciated. As well, we have laboratory that we offer, vitamin and mineral deficiency testing, the INA, as well as genetic testing for gluten sensitivities available. So if you want to support us in that way, we appreciate it. Appreciate your patronage. We'll be back again on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Every Tuesday, I do a full crash course, and expect fantastic information from those if you're new. And join us every Tuesday at 6. And then I'm here every Thursday, minus holidays, at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time to take on your questions. And appreciate you. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next week. Take care.